Welcome, everybody, to I-80 Sports. Thanks for tuning in. This is Brian, joined along with Tom, and today we are talking NHL playoff hockey. Welcome, everybody, to I-80 Sports. Please make sure you follow us on Twitter at I80Sports_Sports NHL. You can also follow us on our website at I80Sports.com and our Facebook discussion group as well. Tom, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, enjoying it. Another day full of playoff hockey. We had a barn burner before with Columbus and Tampa, and now it looks like we have a tight one with Boston and Carolina, and we have what looks to be a blowout over out west with Colorado and Arizona right now.
It certainly does seem that way. 3-0 at the end of the first in that Colorado-Arizona game. But we do want to start today with some unfortunate news that broke yesterday. And it concerns, unfortunately, the death of Dale Hawerchuk. If you are not familiar with this hockey legend, he played many years with the Winnipeg Jets in the 70s and the 80s. He was a fantastic player, a very good person as well. He was also, I believe, the head coach of the Barrie Colts as well. Unfortunately, passes of stomach cancer at the age of 57. Tom, do you have any words about Dale Hawerchuk and his impact on the hockey world?
You know what? He was one of those players that if he played in a different era, the problem with him was he was playing in the 80s in Winnipeg, and to be playing on the Winnipeg Jets in the 1980s to be the superstar there was a little bit of an unfortunate thing when you have Wayne Gretzky, the Edmonton Oilers in your division, and you also have the Calgary Flames who had Joe Newendike, Gary Roberts, Doug Gilmour, all those guys. But the guy was a great goal scorer, a great playmaker. The unfortunate part of his career was he just never seemed to be in the right place at the right time. He was in Winnipeg, and they always seemed to be behind Calgary and Edmonton. He had some years in Buffalo in the early 90s, and it was sort of the same thing. They had Boston and Montreal in their division. They had a decent lineup. They also had Pat LaFontaine and the Sorts. And, he got one last crack at it at the end of his career in Philadelphia, but it wasn't meant to be. It was a Philadelphia team that was swept by the Detroit Red Wings in the 97 final. At the end of the day, though, man, it was a good career for him. 1,188 games played, 518 goals, 891 assists for 1,400 points, 1,409 points. That's not bad. A little known fact about Dale Hawerchuk, I don't know if we have any older followers here or any older Canadian followers per se, but maybe one of the greatest series ever played in international hockey or in hockey history for that matter at all was the 1987 Canada Cup. The best of three final was between the Soviet Union and Canada. The first two games were 6-5 shootouts. The last game, Soviet Union went up 3-0, and for Canada was able to come back. The game was tied 5-5 at the end of the game. At the end of the game, at the end of the game, he was out there with Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux. Mike Keenan just had a hunch to put him out there, as most of the game they had Mark Messier playing with Gretzky and Lemieux. But for some reason, he decided to have Hawerchuk out there. Hawerchuk was able to win a face over the defensive zone, get the puck to Wayne Gretzky. Gretzky fed the puck over to Lemieux, and then we all know that. Maybe not so much for our followers down here in the New York metropolitan area, but up to with our friends up north in Canada, it's one of the biggest hockey moments in their history, and he played a large part in it.
Absolutely, and he also helped grow a lot of young hockey players, especially towards the later half of his life. And I always felt he was a player that was overshadowed in the prime of his career by a guy by the name of Wayne Gretzky. And unfortunately they were the two top players around that time, and Gretzky completely overshadowed him in that time. Whereas if it was Hawerchuk at the top, I think we'd be talking a lot more about the impact of Dale Hawerchuk. But at any rate, still unfortunate that we lose him so soon, and our condolences and thoughts go out to those affected by the death. Moving on in news and notes from the past week in hockey. So Tuukka Rask of the Boston Bruins, their starting goaltender, that is, he left the playoff bubble earlier this weekend, and as the news has started to break slowly, it appears that he apparently had a medical emergency with his daughter, which is the reason why he left the bubble early. A lot of people thought it was comments that he made, that Tuukka Rask rather made back a week ago on Thursday where he said he felt that it didn't feel like playoff hockey because there wasn't fans, and it felt more like exhibition games. But certainly now that we have more and more news trickling in on the real story behind this, I think for me, I can really kind of sympathize with why Tuukka left, why he decided to leave the playoff bubble, because to me, family comes first always, whether you have a kid being born, whether you have a medical emergency, whatever the case may be, you've got to handle what you need. How do you think this impacts Boston going forward, whether it's in this first round or the second round?
Well, obviously, as we can see right now, it doesn't seem to bother him too much. But I mean, like we were saying previous weeks, we were getting on Boston. We were saying, what are these guys doing? This is an older team. Why are they taking their time? And at that time, when Rask had left, everyone was thinking, oh well, that's it. The Bruins are done. Bruins are done. And well, obviously with Halak in that, they seem to be doing just fine without him. And it's not a knock on Tuukka Rask, but it just seems to be that they've either rallied around, or maybe they rallied around Halak, and the loss of Rask doesn't seem to be that big of a deal for them. I mean, they also are a well-built team. They still have Zdeno Chara, even though he's a little older now. He's still number one defenseman. They have the best line in hockey. So I think because of that, it's not a huge loss, just because they were the best team in the league this year. They have a lot of offensive firepower. So, and as we're seeing right now, it doesn't seem to be bothering them too much.
Yeah, they seem to be hitting their stride right now. The Bruins have started to look a lot stronger against Carolina, and I'm wondering in regards to the Carolina Hurricane, how much of one of their star players, Andrei Svechnikov, how much his injury is really playing into this as well, because before he got injured, he was really the centerpiece of that top line between Sebastian Aho and Teuvo Teravainen. So I think they really, really miss having Andrei Svechnikov in the lineup right now.
Yeah, agreed. That was a very ugly collision with him and Chara, I don't think you're going to see him again, even if Carolina is going to rally, which right now they have they got about a little under 6 minutes to get back into this game and try and force it to 6. But that was very ugly. And we talk about one-line teams. That line was driving Carolina in the Ranger series. And losing Svechnikov is a big deal for them, He was definitely the best player on the team. He was definitely the driving force behind that team. Aho as well. I think Svechnikov a little more, though, if you ask me. But yeah, it was a huge loss, and it was weird. It seemed like the tides turned that day. Rask left, and everyone figured, okay, well, the Bruins are done. And now with Svechnikov going down in the game, it seems like the tides have turned a little bit. And the Bruins also seem to have found their game. So maybe this taking the round robin off per se. Maybe we all were like, well, why would they do that? Why would they do that? Well, now it looks like they might have been doing the right thing.
As it turns out, I guess Tuukka Rask not playing as many games for Boston in that round robin has actually paid off handsomely for Yaroslav Halak, who is looking very good in this matchup. For those wondering right now, matchups in the first round are currently ongoing. The Boston-Carolina matchup is currently, I believe, in its second period, or is it in its third period, Tom?
Yeah, it's in the third period. We got a little under 6 minutes. I actually have the game on now, but there's a commercial. But there was last I looked, there were about 6:30 left. We might be a little under that right now. But yeah, it's the third period now. If Carolina doesn't tie it here, the series is over.
Yeah, and it will be really, really interesting to see how that game wraps up. Boston is currently up 3-1 in this series, so if Boston wins this game, they're moving on to that second round and a potential dance with another team that recently moved on in the Tampa Bay Lightning, which could be interesting because the Lightning just moved on this afternoon against the Blue Jackets. They advanced in 5 games. Tom, did you find this as a surprise?
To be honest with you, I didn't. I really didn't. I said for the past 3 episodes, I'm sorry, that Tampa, they really addressed the problems with the bottom 6 this year. And I said, because they addressed the problems with the bottom 6, that's how they're going to beat Columbus. They got it done. It wasn't a blow up by any means. It was still a very close series. But I said that addressing their bottom 6, playing a little more of a defensive game as opposed to a run and gun, they were able to eliminate the Jackets. I thought it was going to go 6, but it went 5, and even today, you still had that little bit of doubt, and Tampa went up 2-0, and then all of a sudden Columbus came back to go 4-2, and you're thinking, oh, wow, Columbus is going to take over the momentum. like they did last year. Now, what people forget last year with that sweep of that series was that in Game 1, Tampa was up 3-0. Tampa was up 3-0 in Game 1 of the first round of the playoffs last year, and everybody pretty much, award them the Stanley Cup at the end of the first period. You don't need to play any more games. And, well, we know how that happened. Now, the difference between last year and this year is they blew a 2-goal lead, went down 4-2, but were able to fight back and win this year's. And they did it all without Steven Stamkos, who I've always been a Stamkos fan. I hope to see him back in the second round. It really would be a shame if he's the Frank Thomas of the Lightning. I don't know if we have some baseball fans on here, but if you look back at the 05 Chicago White Sox, they won that World Series without their Frank Thomas was the White Sox for years, and he was still a rostered player, but they had won that World Series without him. And it really would be a shame if Stamkos doesn't play in these playoffs, because I really do think that guy deserves a Stanley Cup. He's really worked for it down in Tampa all those years.
A lot of those guys on the Tampa Bay Lightning deserve it. I jumps to mind Steven Stamkos, absolutely. I would love to see that young core also lift the cup while they're still together. Andrei Vasilevsky, Victor Hedman, Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov. While they're all still together on the same team before they really enter salary cap hell, it would be really cool to see a lineup like this lift the Stanley Cup, because seeing a homegrown team like this is always a good thing to see in the NHL. But the Tampa Bay Lightning move on against the Columbus Blue Jackets 4-1, and I definitely feel like Tampa Bay had a lot to prove in this series, especially with their 4-0 exit last year against the Blue Jackets. So I really like their tenacity in this series. And you're right, they really did address their bottom six. Just to highlight a few players, Barclay Goodrow, even just yesterday, a goal and an assist. Blake Coleman adding in a helper on that one as well. Their bottom six, with what they acquired, those are two guys that they acquired at the trade deadline. It might have cost them a lot, but it's paying off, and it's paying off in these big, prime time games in the playoffs. There's no other, games going forward. You got to win these now and just keep pushing forward and plugging forward and keep that tenacity up. If they continue with the way they play, Tampa Bay could go very far in this Stanley Cup playoff. But to move on right now, just to highlight a couple of these series and to just give an overview of what we have going right now, keep in mind that this is being shot on Wednesday night, so subject to change, obviously. So, in terms of the catch-up on these series, Colorado is currently up on Arizona 3-1 in their series. Boston is currently up on Carolina 3-1. Philadelphia is currently
49 seconds away from ending it.
For Boston?
Yeah, they're about this game. There's 49 seconds left in the third period.
So then we could be announcing Boston's moving on in this series, potentially winning 4-1, but we'll wait until the final bell. Philadelphia currently leads Montreal 3-1 in their series. Dallas currently leads Calgary 3-2. The New York Islanders lead the Washington Capitals 3-1, and Vancouver is currently tied with St. Louis 2-2. So out of these series so far, we've seen a lot of players really highlight their skills, and we've seen guys kind of break out. Tom, are there any players that come to mind for you that have really found their game, that have really found their stride in this playoff so far in the first round?
Well, we seem to be doing a very heavy Boston Bruin show, and there is one guy on the Bruins who, and it's a guy that people do forget about, David Krejci. What people do forget is that back when the Bruins were in their prime, their first prime 10 years ago, Krejci was actually their first line center. Bergeron was playing their second line center, and Krejci has had a hell of a playoffs. He really has. He's really stepped up when everybody said, "Oh, well, Passer knocks down and Bergeron's not playing well, Marchand's not playing well." Krejci has really stepped it up. I want to see if I can find a stat line here, but I think he's got about 4 or 5 goals these playoffs, and that's a guy who stepped it up. Another guy who I've been raving about the last couple of episodes was Jonathan Toews. I know the Hawks are done, but the way Toews played in these playoffs, man, he really turned back that clock. He really did. The guy. Patrick Kane had a good game last, even though they're done. But actually, I lied about Krejci. He only had 2 goals. 2 goals, 5 assists for 7 points. But 7 points in 7 games, It's not too bad.
Nothing to shake your head at
But
there.
I do also like what Taves did. Yeah. I do like what Taves did in the Chicago series. Unfortunately, the Hawks are out. I thought that they were going to get by Vegas and go on a little run. They didn't. Vegas just seems to be that team where they don't have one key focal point. They just seem to beat you in every part of the ice, and they did that to the Blackhawks. Unfortunately, the Blackhawks are still very thin outside of Kane, Taves, Keith, and maybe even Dominic Kubalik. Dominic Kubalik really showed his worth these playoffs too. But yeah, if there were two guys who came in and people sort of forgot about, it was definitely those two in my book. To add to the Boston Bruin-esque show today, the Bruins just beat Carolina, so we have Tampa and Boston for round two. We can punch their ticket for that.
We do have Tampa and Boston in round 2 of the playoffs, and that should be a very, very fun series to watch. But to go back to that Vegas and Chicago series, now, if you are not aware, the Vegas Golden Knights did beat the Chicago Blackhawks in their series 4-1. One thing that did stand out for me with Chicago, I'll agree with Jonathan Taves. He really turned back the clock and he looked fantastic, and he looked like just as spry as a lot of the other guys out on the ice. And Patrick Kane and his ability to move the puck around and spread the wealth and really help his line succeed as well. And one thing that might come as a surprise for some, Patrick Kane wasn't playing on the top line in this playoffs. He was playing on line 2 with Kirby Dach, their young 18-year-old center. And Kirby Dach looked really, really good in this particular playoffs. He's been getting better and better as the year went on. He is definitely a person I would say keep your eye on for Chicago next year. I think Kirby Dach has a very good chance at exploding next year, especially if he stays with Patrick Kane. We could see him getting a lot of those goals in front of the net because you saw he has a big frame, 6'5", can just really just take away a goalie's vision, and he can get those garbage goals in front of a net on rebounds. So expect him to possibly rack up some points next year. He's going to be a person to watch as the next regular season unfolds. But to move away from Boston as much as we can right now that we know what their destiny is, with the remaining series, what team has kind of jumped out to you as a team to watch for the rest of this playoffs?
I hate to say this as a Ranger fan, it's the Islanders, man. I cannot believe they're doing what they're doing against the Caps. I really, really thought that this was going to be a tight series, but I thought that the Caps would come out on top. I mean, Ovechkin went off last night, but before last night, I'm sitting there, and and the Islanders are kind of like Vegas in a way too. They don't have that one player you got to zero in on. They just roll 4 lines, they roll 3 defensive pairs, and they just beat you that way. You know, Washington is still very top heavy. They're a little older now, but I just thought I saw both teams work hard, and I figured the star factor would make Washington be better in this year. Would make Washington the better team. I was wrong, completely wrong. Every game I've watched, the Caps seem to sort of get the lead. They sort of get back into the game and then sort of go on cruise control. And the Islanders just every time the Caps get back into a game, the Islanders jump right back on them, and they either tie it, and then take the lead every game so far. Every time the Caps have gotten back in, the Islanders have just jumped right on their throats immediately. Big surprise there. Big surprise.
And it's funny because this was a series that back a couple episodes ago, we pegged this series as probably being the most interesting one and the one that's more likely to go to 7 games just because of the Islanders' ability to really go deep into a game and tire a team out and just have the legs that keep on going, have good solid defense, a solid goaltender as well, and the ability to score. And usually if you have those 3 things, you usually end up finding yourself in the win column 9 times out of 10. But definitely to echo what Tom said, we did not necessarily expect the Islanders to really dominate the way that they have. And I think it's going to leave the Capitals with some questions after this season. You know, really, where are they going to go with their current starting goaltender, Braden Holtby, who is an unrestricted free agent this year? Or are they going to go with their young up-and-coming goaltender, Ilya Samsonov, who looks to be on the brink of breaking out and really making a name for himself as a goaltender in the league. So they have some decisions to make this offseason, as well as an aging core, because they have an older Alexander Ovechkin, who quite frankly, is not slowing down any iota. But you also have some older players on that team like TJ Oshie, Nicholas Backstrom. So you have some questions in there that need to be addressed with Washington. Do they make some moves this offseason to try to compensate for that? Do they purposefully wait to see if somebody is exposed in the expansion draft next year for the Seattle Kraken? So there's some questions for Washington fans this summer, and it should be interesting to see what they do. The other interesting series in my mind that I've seen has been Philadelphia at Montreal, and more so because Philadelphia just does not quit. Philadelphia has been a very strong team in this playoff. I think Carter Hart has started to emerge as one of the top goaltenders in the league. What do you think about this, Tom?
Well, one thing I will say about the Flyers, and I hate to give the Flyers any positive comments as a
Hey, you
Ranger
and me
fan, and
both.
I'm sure you do as a Devil fan as well. But one thing I will rave about Philadelphia is their head coach, Alain Vigneault. He has them playing sort of an anti-Flyer hockey. Now, Vigneault's teams have always been about, they've always been, and I hate to use the soccer term, but it's sort of like a play out of the back. It's sort of get the puck in your own zone. You have your two defensemen, you have your center back, and you have your wingers in a fast transition up the ice to beat their other team. Philly's playing that very fast transition game that Vigneault's teams have been known to play, and it just seems to be they just seem to be catching everyone off guard, especially Montreal right now. Because now, I mean, everyone thinks that you go against that Philadelphia Crest, it's going to be, it's going to be a fight-filled physical game, and they don't really seem to be playing like that anymore. They also, they have Kevin Hayes, who's a 50-point guy, but you have Kevin Hayes, who I wish would have been playing like this when he was in New York. Maybe things would have gone a little bit better. And remember, you still have Claude Giroux, you still have Jacob Voracek down there too. So, I really do like how they're playing. I thought that this was, especially after Game 2 where Montreal won 5-0, I thought that this had upset special written all over it. The way the Habs have been in the playoffs over the past few years, the couple times they made it, they've always been known, especially with Pricenet, they've always been known to upset higher seeds. But that doesn't seem to be happening this time. I am curious to see what happens tonight. They are up 3-1. It's not unheard of in the playoffs in the past couple of years for a team to be up 3-1 and blow the lead and lose the series 4-3. I am curious to see what happens tonight with Montreal. If Montreal does win tonight, then you maybe think a little bit about it and go, okay, well, where is this going now? But yeah, I will say with the Flyers, I really do like what Vigneault has them doing down there. They say Vigneault's got a short shelf life, but this is early in the shelf life, and usually Vigneault early on with teams, when he has those teams play in that style that he preaches, they usually run like well-oiled machines, and a lot of times are very hard to slow down.
I also tend to agree. I mean, I feel like with Philadelphia, you mentioned, they really play a defensive rush style of game, and they really do have the pieces to do that in guys like Ivan Provorov and Matt Niskanen. And actually, a lot of their success in this current playoff can be dated back to the trades that they made before the season started as well as during the season, because before the season started, they got rid of a longtime defenseman in Radko Gudas. They traded him straight up to the Washington Capitals for Matt Niskanen. And that has really paid off because Matt Niskanen fits that style a lot better than a bigger, lumbering Radko Gudas does in that transition game. And then another trade that I feel like kind of fell by the wayside. Not a lot of people paid attention to it because it's not a big name. When Philadelphia traded for Nate Thompson. Now, Nate Thompson, if you don't know him, he's one of the best penalty killers in the league. And he's been known to score a goal or two on the penalty kill as well. He has also been the difference on these penalty kills for the Philadelphia Flyers and one of the bigger reasons why they save those situations. But don't be surprised with Montreal if they can steal a game back from Philadelphia. They could possibly win tonight. It's make it a 3-2 series. Then we start talking about this series being more interesting. In my opinion, though, I do see Philadelphia moving on, though, which if they move on and the Islanders move on, we get to see more of a local matchup between the Philadelphia Flyers and the New York Islanders, which, I mean, I guess for you and I, we kind of hope that both of them somehow lose, but
Yeah, but
well, I don't know if that's possible. But this is a perfect segue into our second round predictions. So, Tom, I'll let you start. What are some of your predictions for the second round? Who do you think is going to be facing off against who, and what can we expect to see?
Well, I guess I'll start with the West a little bit. Unfortunately, even though you have these other two series going on in the West right now, Vegas has moved on, as we know last night. Colorado was up 3-0 midway between their game with Arizona, so they'll move on. Even it doesn't matter if it's St. Louis or Vancouver or it's Calgary or Dallas. And I will say that Calgary Dallas series has been more fun than I thought it was going to be. Been a very good series. Unfortunately, I think in the West, all roads are leading to a Vegas Colorado conference final. I'm not saying that any of those teams that advance to play them are horrible and it's going to be 4 games. No, they're going to be good series. But I can't see of those 4 teams over there. I can't see any of them beating Dallas. Any of them beating Vegas or any of them beating Colorado. I just think we are on a crash course for a Colorado Vegas conference final. Out in the East, I know I had said before that a Tampa Boston was certain. It's actually not certain right now. There's still a few moving factors with that because we still have Montreal and Philly, and we still have the Islanders and the Capitals. That could change. That actually could very well change, especially if Montreal upsets. Then that turns into that actually would turn into Tampa getting Montreal, and you'd have the Islanders Washington winner in the other matchup playing. I'm totally drawing a blank right now on that.
It would be playing Boston.
It would be playing Boston, who I've been talking about all show, and now I'm totally forgetting about.
But amazing. We try to ignore Boston, and now we just take it out of our memory.
And now we forget them completely. Like okay, all day Boston Bruins. Wait, what's it? There's a hockey team in Boston. What's their name again? What's their name?
What, the Bruins?
Bruins? UCLA is not a basketball team?
Yeah, no, we can't be talking about the Bruins.
No, but I really would love to see a Tampa Boston series. I really would love to see that. That was one I was actually potentially looking forward to in last year's playoffs. We all know what happened with that. Tampa went down in round 1, but I remember watching the regular season games last year between those two teams. Very intense playoff-like hockey. And I caught a few this year, and very much the same thing. I think a Tampa-Boston series would be great to watch. It definitely would be must-see TV, I guess you could say. It definitely is going to go 6 or 7. It's you're not going to be able to draw a winner out real fast. It's definitely going to be a lot of back-and-forth hockey. To go back to what I was going to say about the West, Colorado, McKinnon just potted one for Colorado. They're up 4-0 now with 10 minutes left in the second. So, but at Tampa Boston series would be great. I mean, Flyers and Islanders, I guess for like your very old school fans, the old school Patrick Division bloodbath days. I mean, that would be fun to watch. But like I said, as a Ranger fan, I'm like, okay, now I'm watching two teams I despise play each other. But then again, I had to watch all those Devil Flyers series all those years when the Rangers were terrible. So at the same time, it's nothing new.
It's very true. I feel like you're absolutely right when we look back at the Western Conference and what we currently have left. So with my predictions, I think Dallas very well could move on in this series as much as I'd like to see Calgary come back. I just don't think their offense has been as potent as Dallas's has. The only thing that I think is going against the Dallas Stars right now is goaltending. I don't know if I fully believe in Anton Khudobin. And if he plays into the second round, I think we got even bigger question marks if he goes up against the Colorado Avalanche. And certainly seeing what their offense has done tonight against the Arizona Coyotes.
And the last game, too. Yeah.
It could be a very rough, very, very rough series for Dallas because, like you said, I don't see how Colorado at this point does not make it to the conference final. It would take an epic collapse for Colorado to see an early exit. But to go back to that Dallas and Calgary series, I do see Dallas advancing. I don't know if they advance in Game 6, but it could even go to a Game 7. Calgary could steal a game back. In that series, it's very much about which goalie, bends first. I mean, between Khudobin for Dallas and Cam Talbot for Calgary, it's both have done a serviceable job, but they're not the strongest goalies in these playoffs. And I think that's very plain and obvious to say. As good as they've played for their teams, they're not as strong as some of the other goaltenders that we've seen in the Western Conference for Colorado, for instance, Philip Grubauer. And for Vegas, take your pick of either Robin Lehner or Marc-Andre Fleury. Both have been very good in net.
Who magically knows how to play in the playoffs now, Marc-Andre Fleury. When he played in Pittsburgh, he couldn't stop a beach ball.
That's true. And Robin Lehner has looked pretty strong, save for maybe one game. The interesting series that we have left going right now. It's this tied series between Vancouver and St. Louis. And if Vancouver, for instance, moves on, they unfortunately have to face Vegas. And a hot Vegas team, that could be a very interesting series if they have to face off against them. And it could be a fun series on both sides because you have strong goaltending on both sides between Vancouver's Jacob Markstrom and for Vegas's Robin Lehner. But you're probably right. Vegas is probably the team that is going to be moving on in that series no matter what, no matter if they have to face St. Louis or if they have to face Vancouver. In the Eastern Conference, Tampa and Boston is going to be a fun series. Who would you say has the edge in that series?
You know what? I'm going to say Boston only because as of right now, we don't know if Stamkos is going to play for Tampa. I had Tampa as my cup prediction. I will say Tampa, with their improved depth, could do a little damage, but I still have to give it to Boston. Boston has, now with Pasternak healthy, Boston has their stars healthy. It's still a big question mark with Stamkos down in Tampa. They're going to need him. And if he doesn't play, I really do think Boston's going to jump all. I don't say Boston's going to jump all over him, but I do think at the end of the day, Boston is going to have the edge with that. I was going to say the goaltending, they don't have Rask anymore, but I just see Boston. I just see Boston with the edge right now, unless Stamkos comes back. If they announce Stamkos is healthy to play, then we got a little bit of a different story here.
I completely agree. If Stamkos finds his way back into the lineup, I think we could have a completely different series that we're talking about. Boston does seem like they could be a team that has the edge, but don't sleep on Tampa Bay, especially after how strong they have looked against the Columbus Blue Jackets. So either way, we as hockey fans are not going to lose out for sure. The Tampa Bay and Boston series will be fun. How do you feel about a New York Islanders and Philadelphia Flyers series, though?
I feel like I want to boycott it. You know what? It's going to be interesting as well because they actually don't really play the same game. The Islanders they're both defensive teams, but it's a little bit of the Islanders are more of a sit-back defensive team. The Flyers play well in the defensive zone, but they're a transition team. When they have the puck in their zone, they transition it very quickly. It's going to be interesting to see how the two teams play against each other. But if there's one thing to remember, these two coaches have coached against each other in the playoffs. If you guys can remember back in 2015, you had Vigneault was coaching the Rangers and Trotz was coaching the Caps. Vigneault came out on top in that series. After Trotz had a 3-1 series lead, the Rangers came back and, they beat them in 7. I think it could go either way. I do maybe think the Flyers have a little bit of an edge with that one. I know I said last series that the Caps had the edge over the Islanders. I mean, Carter Hart's been playing out of his mind. I mean, it's really close to call. I want to say the Flyers, but I could be totally wrong. And we could be talking in a few weeks about how wrong I was again. Hey, so I don't know.
I get it. I was on my high horse saying, oh, Minnesota is totally going to be Vancouver, and look where we are now. I was completely wrong on that prediction, and Vancouver made me eat my words. Good for Vancouver in that sense, that sense, but it is tough to plug. And certainly next week, we will be talking a lot more in depth on these second-round matchups. Figure we would at least give our predictions for today as well. But just to recap real quick on the remaining series for the first round, Colorado currently leads Arizona 3-1. More than likely going to win their series 4-1.
They're up 5-0 right now. They're up 5-0.
Now they're up 5-0 nearing the end of the second period. So Colorado looks like they're going to be winning this series 4-1 in very good fashion tonight. As you know from listening before, the Boston Bruins officially beat Carolina 4-1 in their series, so they're going to be moving on to the second round. We have Philadelphia, who currently leads Montreal 3-1. The Dallas Stars, who currently lead 3-2 on Calgary. The New York Islanders, who currently lead 3-1 on Washington Capitals. And Vancouver and St. Louis is currently tied 2-2. So the first round isn't over yet. There's still plenty of hockey to go. But for myself, For Tom, thank you guys again for joining us here at I-80 Sports. Please make sure you follow us on Twitter at I80_sports NHL. Please make sure you follow us on our website as well at i80sports.com and our Facebook page, the I-80 Sports discussion group. Tom, any last words before we go?
Just looking forward to a good second round. Hopefully, this Boston Tampa matchup comes to fruition. It's been a good ride so far. A lot of people said, "Oh, this is going to be terrible. It's going to be like open, like lockout hockey, like open summer hockey with the guys not caring, like an All-Star game." A lot of intense games so far. A lot of good stuff, and I'm looking forward to seeing some more good games. I'm looking forward to seeing some more good series. So, hopefully, it keeps up. I think it will, and hopefully, we'll have a little more of clarity on what's going on next week, and we'll be able to go a little more in depth into the series and who's going to be playing who.